Everyone is saying the same thing about Infinity Nikki version 2.0. They say the voice acting is flat. They say the dialogue feels robotic. They say the new quests are boring chores designed to waste our time. And they would be right, but they would also be missing the point. Those of you who watched the first video will already be aware of how upset we all were with the story after 1.5 and the headcanon we had to craft just to stitch up all Infold's holes. But for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, here's a quick recap. When Nikki found the threads of reunion in the attic, it was actually covered in very toxic hallucinogenic mushroom spores, which put Nikki into a life-threatening coma. Mirrorland is her coma dream, with early quests such as the Wishful Erosa Miracle outfit hinting at this with the storyline about the townsfolk coma epidemic. The heart of Infinity is actually a donor heart, which is why it became unstable, that was organ rejection, and why we never see Ina as anything but a ghost now, because she's dead. That video is linked in the description below if you want to see the rest of the evidence. When we originally came up with this theory, we were just playing around, but in this update I'm starting to lose my grip on reality because some of these design choices only make sense in the context of our little reimagining. Let's start with Croy and her weirdly inconsistent facial animations when she talks.
Treasure and bestows their blessings upon the Titan's land. Sip the nectar of truth and embark on your journey to the undying city, the eternal miracle.
Croy, a cool new character, but when she speaks, her mouth does not always move. A lot of people called this lazy animating, but what if there is something else going on? Salva has consistent facial animations when he speaks, so why not Croy? Clearly the devs are able to do this. So what if that's actually a narrative choice? And then there's the pot, an ancient artifact supposedly at least 1,000 years old, but it clearly depicts Nikki and Momo. The game wants you to think prophecy, or at least it's being framed as prophecy.
Really? But this is an artifact over 1,000 years old. That's impossible.
What if it's a forgery?
And that brings us to the train.
Madame Julie is on the choo-choo
The
train and will
transition
be
to the
arriving
new map,
shortly.
maybe? I felt stuck here. I haven't actually made it to Ipsiland yet. And I saw a lot of complaining about this quest online as well. Big spoiler warning, if you do not want any of the new 2.0 story content spoiled, click away now. Have you clicked away? Okay. So for those of you who are left, the storyline about Julie is quite interesting and I wanted to talk about it. I saw a lot of complaining about this quest line, and for my part, I can't claim to have enjoyed it. The writing was pretty awkward. There were just so many things about it that felt very uncanny and flat, or just a lack of human-like delivery. And then there's the murder of Julie, the sovereign of sexy. Just exactly what narrative purpose does it even serve to murder this character that Nikki never even met unceremoniously off screen? Why? Yes, I do have thoughts about this. Thanks for asking. If we say that everyone inside Nikki's coma dream represents some aspect of herself, then I believe that Julie represents Nikki's adult sexuality. In this context, it makes a lot more sense that Nikki as a juvenile never really developed this aspect of herself, and in the coma, Nikki is frozen in eternal girlhood. So Julie represents Nikki's murdered potential. Now she's in a coma and possibly dying, she may never have a chance to explore this side of herself. So this questline is Nikki's unconscious mind letting go of that aspect of herself and grieving it. My headcanon lore reason for the sexy Julie questline feeling so awkward and AI generated is because a child's brain doesn't know how to render adult complexity in that kind of a way. Although, yeah, they probably did use AI, but I think they did it with a narrative purpose because AI can actually make some pretty cool things. So this was either intentional or a skill issue. And I'm not really buying skill issue when I look at these gloves. If the patient is dying, then someone needs to manage that transition. And I think the character of Orin is quite interesting. He's presented in the game as a god, but that could be a metaphor for the godlike power of a surgeon or attending physician at Nikki's bedside in the real world. I find the visual language of his character quite interesting too. He wears black, not white. He looks very cool. And after meeting Nikki by the tree, he takes her on a boat ride to her very own floating island. For me, this is giving some very River Styx, Guardian of the Underworld type energy. And then the island itself, a heart, broken by the river bisecting it. It seems like the kind of thing you might get when a dying mind is trying to understand moving from the wards to a more permanent, more palliative location in the hospital. The boat ride could have been her hallucinatory interpretation of a gurney ride between the old ward and her new private room. There are some fan theories floating around that the seer might possibly be some future version of Nikki herself, and this makes sense because when the Sea of Stars was introduced back in 1.5, she somehow had or has another heart of infinity. That raises a lot of questions. Is there more than one heart, or is this person Nikki in the future, or is this somebody that Nikki should never trust because she has the heart that Nikki needs to live, and how did she get that heart? I think it makes the most sense to assume that the seer is the future Nikki, evolved beyond the need for clothes or even a whole body. She exists in the void, coordinating every Nikki across the Nikkiverse to game the odds and find the one version of reality where she can survive long enough to become herself. Perhaps the spores and the threads of reunion dress are their own consciousness, which never meant to hurt Nikki, but the dose was just so high, and now she's in the position of evolve and overcome or succumb to the spores, and she's racing the clock of her own mortality. If Terence McKenna were playing Infinity Nikki, I'm sure he'd say that the shroomlings are there to help her ascend to her true seer form. The glitches in Infinity Nikki are kind of terrifying in this context. They kind of represent moments of derealization. And if Nikki's noticing, perhaps they're proving to her that the world is just a series of set pieces. Do you ever get that feeling in real life? I do sometimes if I think about it too much. Maybe I've been thinking about it more recently because the bread and circus feels like it's getting a little stale and a little thin. Maybe I've just been playing too much and it's time to go touch some grass.